I'm going to be showing how I make some background materials for using my cyanotype colors. This is some really nice paper. It's handmade paper that I buy. I'll put a link below the video so that you can see where I get it from. I have several different patterns. This one is a leaf pattern, which I'm planning to use as part of a background for a large floral piece. And all I'm doing is painting the entire piece of paper. It's just on a piece of cardboard, corrugated cardboard, and I'm going to paint the entire piece of paper with cyanotype solution and then expose it to the sun. No particular amount of time, I'll just leave it out there until I remember to go get it. And then I'll rinse it off, just like I would any other cyanotype piece, and let it dry. And this will give me some really nice paper to use with the project. However, I have just run out of solution, need to mix up a little more, so I'm going to pause my video. Okay, good to go. I have another batch mixed up, so I'm going to finish this one up. And the nice thing is, because I'm not trying to make an image with my cyanotype, I can just set this aside while I work on something, take it outside at any point, dry or wet, to do the exposing it to the sun. So I'm going to set this one aside for just a moment. Okay, since I had to mix up some more solution, I'm going to go ahead and batch a bunch of this background paper all at the same time. This is a really nice pattern, kind of a linear geometric pattern that I've also used in my background work. So I'm going to go ahead and cyanotype dye this piece. And I'm just going to keep dyeing these papers until I run out of this batch of cyanotype solution. And then I'll stop for today. But I'm taking advantage of the sunshine. Today is a nice sunshiny day. And we're due to get a run on rain for the next few days. So this is a good time to get some of this done, which will give me the materials I need to get some background work going. These have been sitting out in the sun probably for close to an hour while I was doing some yard work. And they're completely dry, so I've let them get completely dry. And they're very deep blue right now. That will change some. There's some areas that are kind of a golden color. Differences in the paper, the amount of cyanotype solution that I put on the paper, all those things. But the paper is completely dry. That's the back side. And the next step is going to be to rinse it off. And I'll have to do this very carefully. This paper is a little more fragile than a piece of watercolor paper. You can see here it's already tearing a little bit as I try to lift it off the paper that it's been on, but it has some really beautiful patterns on the reverse side. So it's a really nice way to get two different background effects in your work. So this is going to be done differently. I won't be rinsing this off under a hose or a sink because the force of the water would damage the paper. So for this, I'll be filling this galvanized tub that we keep in our backyard for cooling drinks when we have people over. But it also works out really nicely for rinsing cyanotypes in the outdoors. So I'll be filling that with water and using that. As I fill this up, I'm also setting aside an area to the side. I've used two old cutting boards that I no longer use in the kitchen. They work out really well for laying things out. And this is the first one I'm going to try to work with. It's dry now. It's about the size of the cutting boards, but I have a feeling because it's so fragile, I'll have to do things differently. I can do this for you. After the rinse, I'm going to very carefully squeeze it and lift it up and let it drain. Give it a gentle squeeze, but mostly just let the water drain. And then I'm going to set it aside until it's a little bit dry, and then I'll gradually peel it apart. I'm going to go work on the second piece. I'm going to go ahead and put fresh water in, so I've dumped it out. There's that poor little piece that I just took out. I decided because it was fragile, I would let it dry a little bit before I try to pick it apart. This piece is a good bit bigger. So for this one, I have it folded into quarters, and I'm going to sink it down into the water and just see if I can keep it in a folded position while it rinses off. There was a little bit of tearing when I lifted it, but it seemed to work a little bit better than trying to work with the entire piece at once. And I'm going to shut the water off and just lay it back in gently for a final rinse, because you can see there's still a lot of color coming out. When I'm doing these background pieces, I don't worry so much about getting it perfectly rinsed, because I'm not trying to get white images on the blue background. So we'll see how this goes. And again, I'll need both hands to lift it. Yeah, I think the folding worked better because it's still in fourths, but it's pretty flat and it'll probably dry pretty well. I'll just have to flip it from time to time and then gently peel it apart. The one that I did kind of wadded up didn't fare so well, so I don't recommend that. Now I'm going to go get that big piece and I'm going to use the folded method to rinse it. Okay, this one in quarters still seems kind of large to handle, so I'm going to fold it back one more time. So it's a smaller, more manageable piece, similar to the first one that I tried this way. And I'm also going to have a lot more water in my, it's in the soak, and I'm just going to gently tap it through there. And I can see my water starting to turn blue, so I am getting some of the excess cyanotype solution off the paper. Okay, having handled both of these wet, I think that this pattern produces a sturdier fiber than this leaf pattern that I was working with. This one was very hard to rinse. It's not rinsed as much as I would have liked, but it was just starting to fall apart. So this one definitely is giving me better results so far. All right, time to reveal the end results after everything has been dried. This one is one of the smaller pieces. This was the pattern that was kind of a leafy fern-like pattern. This is the one that I had wadded up into a little wad when I was rinsing it, and I left it that way to dry. So once it was dry, I had to gently pick it apart. There was a lot of damage during the rinsing process and the picking apart and drying process. I did press it lightly with a very lightly warmed iron. That's the silk setting. So it's very interesting. It has a lot of pattern and texture in and of itself. Dark on the side that had the cyanotype solution applied to it. And then I get the nice leafy pattern showing up on the reverse. But I can see some interesting possibilities for this, kind of as part of an undersea background, a little bit seaweedy kind of look. It has potential. The other piece that I have made from the same paper, oops, I'm sorry, I just hit my phone, is this larger one that I had folded into eighths. So it was easier to take it apart with a little less damage. And now that it's pressed, I do have a rather large piece here that has remained intact. So I have both sides, the dark and the light. And then I have some smaller, more raggedy pieces where it was a little harder to pry it apart. But again, lots of very usable paper for mixed media work and mixed media backgrounds. This third one was the paper that had a more geometric pattern. So it seemed to have a little more stability when it was coming apart. It gave me some interesting variations in color because I guess the way I had it folded, the sunlight was hitting it. It stayed together a little better because these more geometrically laid out lines seem to hold the paper fibers together a little better. So I have a nice sheet here that I can use for more mixed media work. So all in all, that was a bit of an experiment. Usually I work with small pieces about like this because I can have them laying on a piece of glass while I'm rinsing them, and just gently pour water over them with a cup or something like that until they're rinsed, and then just leave them on the glass to dry. Doing these larger pieces presented a little bit of a challenge, but I'm not unhappy with the results, and I think I have some paper that I can put to good use. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and come back again. I'm sure I'll have more adventures with my cyanotypes.